everybody again. Welcome back to It's a Living with Shelley D. Today's my special guest star, Nancy Carroll. Hello, Nancy. Hello. Nancy Carroll happens to be my beautiful mother, so we probably sound alike. So the first thing I want to ask you is we're talking about jobs. I wrote that book about job hopping, so I wanted to ask you about your first job that you remember that you had. What is the first job you remember having?
First job? When I was a kid?
Well, maybe the first paid job?
First paid job. Oh, mowing lawns for other people.
Before that, or after that, you
After
remember?
that.
I think you worked for IBM.
Well, I did. I was a typist.
Key punch operator for
punch
IBM.
operator.
I remember you told me how boring it was. You said it was so boring.
Oh, boring, my word, yes. Same old thing. Numbers, numbers, numbers. Words, words, numbers, numbers.
What exactly does a key punch operator, what did they do back then in the 50s?
We ran these machines that were like a typewriter, only they were much larger, and they punched cards instead of just typing on paper.
Yeah, oh. That's cool. But I remember you saying you had to take so many breaks because it was so monotonous.
Oh, yeah.
You wanted to
They
just scratch your
every
eyeballs
20
out.
minutes.
Oh, every 20 minutes?
Yeah.
So did the girls go outside and smoke,
So
or
we
what
did-
did they do?
Yeah, well, go get a drink of water or go to the bathroom and just sort of relax a little bit because it was so terribly tedious.
Yes.
And it wasn't all that bad.
This is the early 50s. You'll be 93 next year, so that must have been, you graduated high school in 52? Or, can't really remember. 50? Oh, wow, that's crazy. So after you left
That's
there...
an eon ago.
Yes, a little bit. After you left there, what did you decide to do? After you left IBM, because you said, I can't take it anymore, I'm going to die.
What I decided to do? Well, it was sort of a spur of the moment thing. My girlfriend and I, who worked there, we were strolling down the streets of St. Pete looking for a good place to eat. And we passed by the recruiter's office. And we were both bored with our job. And so I said, well, that's what we ought to do, join the military. And she said, I will if you will. And I said, well, I will if you will. So we walked in and we got some information about signing up. And so they interviewed us. And so they told me, sign right here. And I signed and then turned to her and says, I'm sorry, but you're not qualified.
Uh-oh.
So she didn't get to go, and I had to go in all by myself, scared to death.
I imagine.
But then I decided it was the best move I had made because the work was good. It was interesting. It didn't pay all that much, but it paid enough. And I met the man I later married.
Mm-hmm. What did you do when you first got to the base? What kind of job, after your basic training, what kind of job did they sign you up for?
I was a reporter at the base newspaper.
That's fun.
It's called the Tail Spinner.
That's awesome.
And it was an interesting job because any visitor of note that we came to the base, we had the job of interviewing them and writing them up in the newspaper. And one of the first ones that I remember was Bob Hope. He came to the base, and
so cool.
we interviewed him.
Wow.
And then there was a man who was an entertainer. I don't remember his name.
I remember you telling me he was like a flamenco dancer.
Oh yeah, that was later.
It wasn't. Who was that guy? I can't remember. Yeah, poor guy.
But anyway, it was an interesting job, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And at one point, Bob Hope came to the base.
Yeah.
Yes, he always did back then. He visited all the military bases.
You're like, Mr. Hope, Mr. Hope.
Well, I remember watching him get off of the airplane that brought him in, and I recognized him before I even realized who he was because of that little hop, skip, walk that he had.
Really?
And he just sort of bounced along.
Bless his little heart.
And it was interesting.
Yeah.
And he was very friendly, very receptive to our jobs, and knew we were there to interview him. And of course, he had been interviewed by the upper class of reporters, and here were just little nobodies in the military. But he was very patient with us, and very nice.
Yeah.
And then, I went. I did some temporary duty over at the Army base.
Oh yeah.
And that was interesting because they were altogether different than the Air Force. They were
really?
more gung ho, and we were more laid back.
My nephew used to call. He was in the Army. He used to call the Air Force the chair force.
Yeah.
So you go over there to the Army base, and what did they have you doing over there?
Well, they introduced me to some of the WACs, the women in the Army.
Oh, they were called WACs?
WAC, W-A-C.
I wonder why they were called WACs. Army Corps,
what it stands for, but anyway, that's what they were called.
You were Air Force, they were Army Corps.
WAF, W-A-F.
Yeah, you were Air Force, yeah. So anyway, how did you get along with them?
So anyway...
They got along okay with you? They got along okay with you?
They did.
Yeah.
They considered us the stepchildren because the WACs were the first women in the Army.
Okay.
I mean, women in the military.
Oh, wow.
And so they... came later than they did, and they had much more experience with the military than we did.
Was that hard to follow those rules? I mean, the way the military, you can't do this, you have to do this. Everything had to be dotted and
there were rules and regulations, and we learned them very quickly.
You're a rule follower, though.
Yeah, but
you didn't have a problem.
It wasn't undoable. I mean, we can't say that it was hard. It was just different.
Yeah.
And it was something that we knew we had to do it, so we did it.
What was the time that you got called into the sergeant's office for something you did? I think you made a mistake or something. The big Native American guy, Sergeant White Cloud or whatever his name was, and you start crying. I forgot what that was. I can't remember what you did.
I really don't remember that.
Yeah, I just remember that story. You were like, we're laughers or criers. And if we get nervous, we're going to laugh. If we get nervous or sad, we're going to cry. And so you start crying, and he was like, what's the matter with you? And you said, I'm scared of you. He said, why? I'm a nice guy.
Oh, that was Sergeant Red Elk.
Sergeant Red Elk. And he said, you think I go home and beat my wife?
He was a full-blooded Native American.
Yeah.
And built like a tank.
Yes.
And he was, when he was stern, that meant he was serious and you were in trouble.
He just look at you want to bust out crying, right?
Yeah, he did. He just look at us, and he took a deep breath, and his shoulders were like this, and take a deep breath, we thought, we got it now. But he said, now, just because I'm Native American and I've got a reputation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm not fierce. Really, I'm not going to hurt you. He said, I don't go home and beat my wife and kids.
That's amazing.
And that sort of smoothed things over because we realized that, hey, just because he's a superior officer,
and scary looking and big and
scary looking. He was like you see a Native American in the movies.
Yes,
that's what he looked like.
Wow.
With
a name
shoulders
like Red
like
Elk,
this,
he looked like out of a John Wayne movie.
He could stop a bullet by looking at it.
Wow.
But he was tough.
Yeah.
But then when we, at one point in our training, we had a troop party, and we could invite anybody they wanted. So we invited him.
Oh, yeah.
And
you invited him? Oh,
he was agreed. He agreed to come and talk to us and mix and mingle with us. And we found out that he was just a human being. And he says, I'm not going to hurt you. I don't go home and beat my wife and kids.
So you, all in all, you served a few years in the Air Force, and then you got married.
I was, yeah.
And then you were
I met this young sergeant, and I thought he was...
met him. And you, love at first sight after what, 3 months of dating?
I remember dating.
You were like 3 months of dating? to Dad, and then you got married. 3 months? I think Dad said it was 3 months.
You remember better than I do.
Well, thank you for having our little discussion today about your first memories of your jobs, and we will put it on our podcast. Thank you, Nancy Carroll, and have a wonderful life.